Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We are diving into a really foundational text today. It's one that didn't just, teach people how to negotiate. It really shifted how people thought about disagreement itself. It's getting
Yeah.
to Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton.
Yeah, this book came out in 1981, and it landed at such a perfect moment, historically speaking. The
Right.
world was just dominated by what we call positional bargaining. Think about labor disputes back then, international conflicts, even just arguments at home, really.
Right, everything felt like a fight, a zero-sum game.
Exactly. People
Yeah.
would just dig in their heels, take these extreme entrenched positions, and the result, often it was just stalemate. Or maybe you got an agreement, but both sides kind of felt ripped off or exploited.
And the authors, they were all connected to the Harvard Negotiation Project, which is a powerhouse. They were really offering something different, a genuine alternative. They wanted a way out of that whole destructive cycle. Fisher, he had this deep legal background, right? So he was looking for solutions that would actually last, that went beyond just who had more power.
And I think Uri's background as an anthropologist is really crucial, too. He helped ground the whole thing, not just in legal ideas, but in understanding, basic human needs,
Yeah.
how we communicate. That's what makes the framework feel so universal. They weren't just tweaking tactics. They were basically designing a better way for people to interact.
So our mission today is to give you the shortcut to their big idea, principled negotiation. It's a framework, really, a path to getting agreements that are efficient, friendly, and actually good for everyone involved. And it works, whether you're negotiating a huge international treaty or just figuring out the family budget.
Yeah, the key difference is moving away from this idea that negotiation is about winning territory.
Right.
Instead, the goal becomes solving a shared problem. And that shift, well, it changes the whole dynamic. You go from being adversaries to collaborators. That's the real genius of it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. So what is this collaborative method built on? There are 4 pillars, 4 core ideas that hold it all together. The first one, and maybe the one that takes the most self-control, is separate the people from the problem.
Right. Because the easiest way for any negotiation to just go completely off the rails is when the people issues the relationship, the emotions get tangled up with the actual substance of the disagreement. Someone criticizes your proposal.
And you immediately feel like they're criticizing you.
Exactly. Your gut reaction is personal. This framework insists you have to see.
Okay, that makes sense on paper. But, how do you actually do that? How do you stop yourself from getting defensive or angry when the other person is maybe deliberately pushing your buttons or just being super aggressive with their position?
Well, you try to manage it proactively. The authors really stress this. Address the relationship stuff first. Acknowledge their frustration. Maybe validate their feelings. Sometimes you have to do that before you can even get to the main topic. So if you acknowledge their emotions, I can see you're really frustrated by this delay. You take the personal sting out of the argument over the substance, like the deadline itself.
Yeah.
You're dealing with the feeling first.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that softens the ground a bit. So once we've hopefully managed the emotional side, we get to the second pillar. Focus on interests, not positions. You said this is the big conceptual shift.
It really is. Because a position is just what you say you want. Like, I demand a 20% raise. That's a position. An interest is the why behind it, the underlying need, the motivation. I need a 20% raise because I feel undervalued here, or maybe because my living costs went up and I need financial stability.
Okay, so if you're just stuck arguing about the 20% number, you're blocked. But if I understand your interest is about feeling valued or needing stability, suddenly there are way more possibilities than just finding that 20% cash.
Exactly. Maybe the solution is better benefits or a clearer promotion path or more flexible hours that address that need for stability. Focusing on interests unlocks all these other options that just aren't visible when you're fixated on the position.
It avoids getting entrenched.
Right. Think of that classic example they used, the 2 sisters arguing over one orange. Their position is, I want the whole orange. But when you dig into their interest, it turns out one sister needs the peel to bake a cake, and the other wants the juice to drink.
So if they'd focused on interests, they could both have gotten 100% of what they actually needed, instead of just splitting the orange 50-50 and both being unsatisfied.
Precisely. That's the power of looking underneath the stated demand.
Okay, so that insight that the underlying needs might actually be compatible even when the demands seem opposed leads perfectly into the third pillar. Invent options for mutual gain. If we understand the interests, how do we actually design solutions that meet them?
Right. So this pillar directly attacks that fixed pie idea, the assumption that there's only so much to go around, and if you get more, I automatically get less. The book argues negotiation needs uh, a dedicated brainstorming phase. You just generate a ton of options without judging them yet.
Yeah, they make a big point about separating the inventing part from the deciding part. We often jump straight to judging ideas because we're afraid suggesting something means we're agreeing to it.
Exactly right. You have to consciously stop yourself from evaluating too soon. The goal here is to actively expand the pie. Look for things that are low cost for one side but high value for the other. Find different ways to meet those underlying interests we talked about. This creative step is absolutely essential for finding those clever win-win solutions.
Okay, so we brainstorm, we come up with all these creative options, but then how do we choose? Especially when, let's be honest, power dynamics are almost always lurking in the background. How do we make sure the choice is fair? That brings us to number 4. Insist on using objective criteria.
Yes, this is the fairness check. If agreements are just based on who's more stubborn or who has more muscle or just some random whim, they won't stick. They won't feel legitimate. Objective criteria means basing the agreement on some external, impartial standard that both sides can, ideally, agree on.
So things like market value, or what experts say, maybe legal precedents, or just standard industry practice, things outside of our personal preferences.
Exactly. It lets you shift the conversation. Instead of, you need to give in to my demand, it becomes, look, let's agree on this fair standard like the Blue Book value for this car and see where that takes us. It takes the personal battle out of it and grounds the decision in something external.
That makes sense. Now, we've talked a lot about collaboration, which is great, but the reality is sometimes you do need leverage. You need some power, and that's where Chapter 6 is critical, right? Talking about your BATNA.
Right. BTNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's basically your plan B. What will you do if you don't reach a deal in this negotiation? Knowing your BATNA is, well, it's your source of power. If you have a really strong alternative waiting for you, you can negotiate much more confidently. You know when to walk away.
Because you won't accept a deal that's worse than your BATNA. It's your safety net. It protects you from making a bad deal just because you feel pressured or desperate. But you mentioned something important earlier. The book doesn't just say know your BATNA, it says develop it. How do you actively build that power?
Yeah, that's key. It's not passive. You actively invest time, maybe resources, into making your alternatives better. So if you're negotiating a job offer, your BATNA might just be your current job. Okay? But if you spend a few weeks actively interviewing and you land another competitive offer, boom, you've just significantly strengthened your BATNA.
So it's an ongoing process.
It's a continuous process of improving your walkaway options.
Right.
That way, even if you start out as the seemingly less powerful party, you're building your leverage.
Okay. But what about those times when the other side just refuses to play ball? They won't focus on interests, they stick to rigid positions, maybe they even get personal. The book has strategies for that too, right? Like something called negotiation jujitsu.
Yeah, negotiation jujitsu. It's like the martial art. You don't meet their force head on with your own opposing force. Instead, you kind of deflect their attack. You use their energy to redirect the conversation back to the merits, back to the actual issues.
Okay, so if they attack you personally.
You don't attack back. That just escalates things. Instead, you might acknowledge their point or their feeling and then immediately pivot back to the problem itself.
Can you give a quick example of how that pivot works?
Sure. Let's say the other side says something aggressive, like, your company's offer is just insulting. You clearly don't value this partnership at all. A counterattack would be, no, your demands are insulting, which goes nowhere.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu would be something like, I understand you feel the offer doesn't reflect the value you see in our partnership. That actually raises a really important question. What specific criteria do you think we should use to fairly assess the value here? See, you took their attack, acknowledged the feeling behind it, and turned it into a question about objective standards. You're pulling them back towards interests and merits.
That's clever. It sort of disarms the attack by reframing it.
Exactly. You're sidestepping the personal conflict and focusing on the problem-solving process.
So if we connect all this to the bigger picture, what getting to yes really does, it feels like it goes way beyond just negotiation tactics. It's offering a pretty profound philosophical shift, isn't it? It's reframing negotiation entirely not as a battle, but as like a collaborative problem-solving exercise.
Absolutely. It's pushing for an ethical approach, one where mutual understanding, finding common ground, building durable respect, those things are prioritized over just trying to trick or manipulate the other side into giving in.
Yeah, that really stands out compared to some other negotiation advice you might hear, which can feel much more focused on competitive moves or psychological games.
Right. This book argues that actually seeking these collaborative interest-based solutions isn't just nicer. It's usually the most effective strategy in the long run, whether you're talking multi-million-dollar business deals or, international diplomacy or family arguments.
The universal relevance really strikes me. This isn't just for the boardroom or the UN. These principles separating people from problems, focusing on interests, they apply just as much to, I don't know, disagreeing with your spouse about chores, or navigating a conflict in your local community group, or managing a team project.
That's why it's had such lasting impact, I think. It taps into a shared human need for finding ways to cooperate fairly and efficiently. If you really embrace this model, it changes how you see yourself in a disagreement. You stop being an adversary and start becoming, hopefully, a partner in solving the problem together.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to put this into practice? How do we take these four pillars and actually use them day to day?
Well, it really starts with self-awareness and practice, lots of practice. The first skill to hone is active listening. And I mean really listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but listening specifically to try and understand the other person's underlying interests, what's really driving them.
And maybe trying that reflective listening thing, repeating back what you think you heard.
Yes, exactly. So if I'm hearing you right, the main issue isn't really the exact deadline. It's more the worry about unexpected costs down the line. Is that correct? That kind of checking in does wonders for building trust and making sure you actually understand.
Okay. And we can practice interest identification all the time, right? Like
Hmm.
the next time your teenager argues about curfew, look past the position, I need to stay out till midnight,
Hmm.
and try to figure out the interest. Maybe it's about feeling trusted or social connection or wanting more independence.
Right. And once you understand that underlying interest, say, the need for independence, you might be able to find a solution that meets that need, even if it's not the midnight curfew they initially demanded. Maybe it's an earlier curfew, but with some other new responsibility or privilege attached.
And that third pillar, inventing options.
Hmm.
We need to make brainstorming more normal in everyday decisions.
Definitely. Even for simple things. You and your friends can't decide where to eat. Don't just debate the first two suggestions. Force yourselves to list, say, 10 different options first, even silly ones. Just get the creative juices flowing before you start evaluating. It breaks that habit of just settling for the first okay idea.
The book also suggests some practical tools like interest mapping, actually writing it down.
Yeah, literally drawing it out. Make a list or a table. Who are the parties involved? What are their stated positions? And what do you think their underlying interests are? When you see it visually, where interests might overlap, where they conflict the path towards a solution, often becomes much clearer. It can be surprisingly powerful.
And you see this work in the real world.
Oh, absolutely. There are countless case studies. Complex business mergers where inventing creative options led to deals far better for both sides than they initially thought possible. And on the personal side, just applying that first principle, separate the person from the problem, can stop small disagreements from blowing up into major relationship damage.
So I guess the single biggest takeaway, the major insight we need to hold on to is this. Negotiation isn't supposed to be a battle of wills. It's a creative problem-solving process. And the goal is finding fair, objective solutions that work for everyone.
Right. And when you approach it with that mindset, the agreements you reach tend to be more than just flimsy compromises. They can be real, sustainable improvements that genuinely satisfy the important interests of everyone involved.
It really requires a shift towards creativity, fairness, and, well, an ethical approach.
Which naturally raises an important question.
Yeah.
One we bump up against all the time in the real messy world. What if the other side doesn't want to play fair? What if they seem purely interested in taking advantage and they see your principled, collaborative approach as just weakness?
That's the tough part, isn't it? The challenge for you, the principled negotiator, is navigating that. How do you stick to your ethical framework, keep pushing for interests, keep looking for objective criteria, but also protect yourself?
And that's where being absolutely crystal clear on your BATNA and being willing to use it becomes essential. You maintain your principles, you keep trying the collaborative approach, but you have that line in the sand. You know when the other side's refusal to engage fairly means it's time to walk away and pursue your best alternative.
So the book empowers you to be ethical without being a pushover.
Exactly. It shows that real negotiating power doesn't come from manipulation or threats. It comes from clarity about your own interests and alternatives, thorough preparation, and the integrity to insist on fairness or walk away if fairness isn't possible.
I guess the ultimate lesson here isn't really about how to win in the old sense. It's about changing your definition of winning altogether. Maybe winning means jointly building something better, something durable and equitable, rather than just conquering the other side.
That shift in perspective,
Yeah.
that's the key, especially in a world that's so interconnected now. That's how you build relationships and solutions that actually last.